Sam Morrison had seen enough sunrises over the Texas plains to know when trouble was brewing on the horizon. At 62, his weathered hands still gripped the reins steady, and his gray eyes could spot a dust cloud from 20 miles out. This morning, that dust cloud was heading straight for his ranch, and it carried more than just wind and dirt. The year was 1878, and the frontier was changing. The Apache wars had mostly ended, but tensions still ran high between the white settlers and the native peoples. Sam had built his ranch on respect for the land, respect for his cattle, and respect for all people who crossed his path, no matter the color of their skin or the language they spoke. From his front porch, Sam watched as 6 riders approached. He recognized the leader immediately, Marcus Blackwood, a slave trader who had switched to trafficking Apache captives when the Civil War ended that particular business. Blackwood was a cruel man with cold eyes and a heart to match. Behind him rode 5 of his men, all armed and looking like they meant business. Sam stood up slowly, his joints protesting after too many years in the saddle. He walked to the edge of his porch, his own rifle within easy reach, but not yet in his hands. A man learned to read situations out here, and this one felt dangerous. "Blackwood," Sam called out, as the riders pulled up in front of his house. "What brings you to my land?" Marcus Blackwood dismounted, his boots hitting the dusty ground with a heavy thud. He was a big man, not tall, but thick through the chest and shoulders. His black beard was streaked with gray, and his smile never reached his eyes. "Sam Morrison, you old dog," Blackwood said, though there was no warmth in his voice. "I hear you've been doing well for yourself out here. Nice spread you got." Sam's eyes narrowed. "I work hard for what I have. What do you want, Marcus?" Blackwood gestured to his men, and they formed a loose circle around Sam's front yard. "I got myself a little business opportunity, and I think you might be interested." "I doubt that very much," Sam replied. "We've never seen eye to eye on what makes good business." "Now, don't be hasty," Blackwood said, walking closer to the porch. "You see, I've got something special back at my camp. An Apache woman, maybe 25 years old, pretty as a picture and strong as a Mustang. She'd make a fine houseworker, or maybe something more if you catch my meaning." Sam's jaw tightened. He'd heard rumors about Blackwood's operations, but this was the first time the man had come to him directly. "I catch your meaning just fine, and I'm telling you to ride off my property right now." Blackwood laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Hold on there, old man. You haven't heard my offer yet. She's worth at least $500 in Santa Fe, maybe more, but I'm willing to let her go for $300. Cash money." "I said no," Sam stated firmly. "I don't deal in human beings." "Come now, Sam. Don't get all righteous on me. These Apache, they're not like us. They're savages, barely human at all. She'd be better off working for a decent Christian man than running wild with her people." Sam's hand moved to rest on his belt, close to his sidearm. "You're wrong about that, Marcus. Dead wrong. And I'm telling you one more time to get off my land." But Blackwood wasn't finished. He pulled out a piece of paper from his vest pocket and unfolded it slowly. "See, here's the thing, Sam. I got myself a legal bill of sale for this woman. Bought her fair and square from some soldiers who captured her after a raid. Everything's proper and legal." Sam knew the law was often twisted to serve men like Blackwood, but legal didn't make it right. "I don't care what papers you're waving around. My answer is still no." Blackwood's smile faded. "You know, Sam, I've always heard you were a reasonable man, a man who understood how business works out here on the frontier. But maybe I was wrong about you." "You were wrong about a lot of things," Sam said. "Starting with thinking you could come onto my land and try to sell me another human being like she was a horse or a cow." One of Blackwood's men, a thin fellow with nervous eyes, spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should just head on to town. Find someone else who's interested." Blackwood turned and glared at the man. Did I ask for your opinion, Jenkins? Then he looked back at Sam. You see, Sam, here's my problem. I've been riding for 3 days and my men are tired. My horses need rest and water. And that Apache woman, well, she's been more trouble than I expected. Tried to escape twice already. Sam felt a cold anger building in his chest. What are you saying, Marcus? I'm saying I need to make a sale today, and I came to you first out of respect. But if you won't buy her, I'll have to find other arrangements. And those arrangements might not be so comfortable for her. The threat was clear, and Sam understood exactly what Blackwood meant. There were worse fates than being sold as a houseworker, and men like Blackwood knew how to find buyers for every twisted desire. Sam was quiet for a long moment, thinking. He looked at the 6 armed men surrounding his property and weighed his options. He was good with a gun, better than most, but 6 against 1 were poor odds, and somewhere out there, probably tied up in Blackwood's camp, was an Apache woman who needed help. Where is she now? Sam asked finally. Blackwood's smile returned. So you are interested. I thought you might see reason. She's back at my camp about 2 miles south of here. Got her tied up good and proper. Don't worry about that. I want to see her first, Sam said. If I'm going to spend $300, I need to know what I'm buying. Smart man, Blackwood said. That's good business sense, but I'll need some kind of guarantee that you're serious. Maybe $50 as a down payment? Sam walked into his house and returned with a small leather pouch. He counted out $50 in gold coins and held them up. This is all you get until I see her, and we make a proper deal. Blackwood's eyes gleamed at the sight of the gold. Fair enough. Boys, let's ride. As they mounted their horses, Sam saddled his own horse, a steady buckskin gelding named Jake. The ride to Blackwood's camp was tense and quiet. Sam's mind was racing, trying to figure out how he could help the Apache woman without getting himself and her killed in the process. The camp was a sorry sight. 3 dirty tents surrounded a cold fire pit, and horses were tied to a makeshift rope corral. But what caught Sam's attention immediately was the woman sitting on the ground near the largest tent. She was young, as Blackwood had said, but calling her pretty seemed wrong somehow. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with decoration or fancy clothes. Her long black hair was braided simply, and her dark eyes held a strength that hadn't been broken despite whatever she'd endured. She was tied with thick rope around her wrists and ankles, but she sat straight and proud, watching the approaching riders with no sign of fear. Sam dismounted and walked closer, ignoring Blackwood's chatter about her good points like she was livestock. When he got within 10 feet, the woman looked directly at him. Their eyes met, and Sam felt something pass between them, not romance but recognition. She saw in him something different from the other men, and he saw in her a dignity that couldn't be bought or sold. She's a fine specimen, Blackwood was saying. Strong enough to work all day, and she's got enough fight in her to keep things interesting, if you know what I mean. Sam wanted to hit the man, but he kept his voice level. Has she been hurt? Nothing permanent, Blackwood shrugged. Had to teach her some lessons about trying to escape, but she learns quick. Sam saw bruises on her arms and a cut on her lip that was still healing. His anger burned hotter, but he forced himself to think clearly. Getting angry wouldn't help her. What's her name? Sam asked. Blackwood looked surprised by the question. Name? I don't know. What does it matter? You can call her whatever you want. Sam looked at the woman again. She had been watching their conversation, and though she might not understand all the English words, she clearly understood the situation. When Sam looked at her directly and pointed to himself, saying Sam, she nodded slightly. Then she spoke one word, so quietly he almost missed it. Ayana. Ayana, Sam repeated, and she nodded again. Well, ain't that sweet? Blackwood said sarcastically. You two are already getting acquainted. So what do you say, Sam? Do we have a deal? Sam was quiet for a moment, looking at Ayanna and thinking about the choice he was about to make. He could walk away right now, go back to his ranch, and pretend this never happened. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice by most people's standards. But Sam had fought in the Civil War, and he'd seen what happened when good people did nothing while evil flourished. He'd promised himself after the war that he'd never again stand by and watch injustice happen when he had the power to stop it. "I'll take her," Sam said finally. "But I want to see that bill of sale first." Blackwood pulled out the paper again and handed it over. Sam read it carefully, noting the official stamps and signatures. It looked legitimate enough, though that didn't make it right. $300, Blackwood said, plus the $50 you already gave me. Sam reached into his saddlebags and pulled out another leather pouch. He counted out $250 in gold and silver coins, the money he'd been saving to buy more cattle in the spring. "There's your money," Sam said. "Now give me the bill of sale." Blackwood handed over the paper and snatched up the coins, biting one of the gold pieces to test it. "Pleasure doing business with you, Sam. She's all yours now." One of Blackwood's men cut the ropes binding Ayanna's feet, but left her hands tied. She stood up slowly, her muscles stiff from sitting in one position for too long. Sam noticed she moved carefully, probably sore from rough treatment and long days of travel. "You might want to keep her tied up for a while," Blackwood advised. "Like I said, she's got a lot of fight in her." "I'll handle her just fine," Sam replied. He helped Ayanna up onto his horse, settling her in front of him on the saddle. She tensed when he touched her arm, but she didn't try to pull away. As they rode away from the camp, Sam could feel the weight of what he'd just done. He'd spent almost all his savings to buy another human being, which went against everything he believed in, but he'd also taken the first step towards setting things right. The ride back to his ranch was slow and careful. Ayanna sat stiffly in front of him, alert and watching everything around them. Sam tried to think of words that might reassure her, but he didn't speak Apache, and he wasn't sure she'd trust anything he said anyway. When they reached his ranch house, Sam helped Ayanna down from the horse and led her to the front porch. She stood where he indicated, her bound hands in front of her, waiting to see what would happen next. Sam looked at her for a moment, then pulled out his knife. Ayanna's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't step back. Instead of threatening her with the blade, Sam reached for her bound wrists and carefully cut through the thick rope. "You're free to go," Sam said, rubbing his hands together to show her what he meant. "Free." Ayanna looked at her freed hands, then at Sam, confusion clear on her face. This wasn't what she had expected from a white man who had just bought her. Sam pointed toward the horizon, then made a walking motion with his fingers. "You can leave. Go home." But even as he said it, Sam realized the problem. Ayanna was hundreds of miles from Apache territory, with no horse, no weapons, and no supplies. She'd never make it home alone, and there were plenty of men like Blackwood roaming the frontier who would be happy to capture a lone Apache woman. Ayanna seemed to understand this too. She looked toward the distant mountains, then back at Sam. When she spoke, her English was halting but clear. "Where?" "My people." Sam shook his head sadly. "Far away. Very far." They stood in silence for a moment, both understanding the impossible situation. Sam had freed her legally by buying her, but practically she was still trapped by circumstance and distance. Finally, Sam made a decision that would change both their lives. "You can stay here," he said, pointing to his house. "Work if you want, eat, sleep, be safe. When the time is right, I'll help you get home." Ayanna studied his face for a long time, looking for deception or hidden motives. What she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded once. "I work," she said, "but I am not owned." "No," Sam agreed. "You are not owned. You are free, and you are welcome here." As the sun began to set over the Texas plains, Sam realized he had just made a promise that might cost him everything. But looking at Ayanna's proud bearing and the strength in her dark eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. The real challenge would be keeping that promise in a world that didn't want Apache women to be free. The first week passed like two strangers learning to share the same waterhole. Sam went about his daily ranch work, tending cattle and mending fences, while Ayanna observed everything with careful eyes. She had chosen to sleep in the small barn rather than the house, despite Sam's offer of the spare room. Trust, Sam understood, would take time to build. On the third day, Sam found Ayanna working in his neglected vegetable garden, pulling weeds with quick, efficient movements. She had somehow found seeds in his storage shed and had planted them in neat rows. When she noticed him watching, she pointed to the ground and said simply, "Grows food." "That's good thinking," Sam replied. "I'm not much of a gardener myself." Ayanna nodded toward the cattle grazing in the distance. "You grow cows." It was the first time Sam had seen anything approaching a smile on her face, and it changed everything about her appearance. The wariness was still there, but underneath it was intelligence, humor, and a strength that captivity hadn't broken. By the end of the first week, they had developed a routine. Ayanna would rise before dawn and tend to the garden, gathering eggs from the chickens and drawing water from the well. Sam would handle the cattle and horses, riding out to check the fences and watch for signs of trouble. In the evenings, they would share simple meals, usually in comfortable silence. Sam began teaching her more English words, pointing to objects around the ranch and saying their names. Ayanna was a quick learner, and she began teaching him words in Apache. "Shash," she said, pointing to a bear track they found by the stream. "Chosh," indicating his horse. The peaceful routine was interrupted on a Tuesday morning when visitors arrived. Sam was shoeing a horse when he heard the sound of a wagon approaching. He looked up to see Father Miguel Rodriguez, the priest from the nearest town, driving his small cart up the dirt road to the ranch. Father Miguel was a good man, Sam knew, but he was also tied to a community that might not understand the situation at the ranch. As the priest climbed down from his wagon, Sam noticed Ayanna had disappeared into the barn. "Samuel, my friend," Father Miguel called out in his accented English. He was a small man with kind eyes and graying hair, originally from Mexico, but serving the mixed community of settlers, Mexicans, and converted Indians in the area. "I hope I find you well?" "Father Miguel," Sam replied, setting down his hammer. "What brings you out this way?" "I have heard some interesting stories in town," the priest said carefully. "Stories about you having a guest at your ranch." Sam's jaw tightened. Word traveled fast in small frontier communities, and he'd been expecting this conversation. "What kind of stories?" "Marcus Blackwood has been telling people that you bought an Apache woman from him. He says you paid good money for her." "Blackwood talks too much," Sam said. Father Miguel moved closer, lowering his voice. "Samuel, if what he says is true, you are in a dangerous position. The territorial authorities do not look kindly on harboring Apache, even those purchased legally." "She's not being harbored," Sam replied. "She's free to leave anytime she wants." "But she has not left?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "She has nowhere safe to go right now." Father Miguel nodded slowly. "I see. And you feel responsible for her welfare?" "I feel responsible for doing what's right." The priest walked over to look at the vegetable garden, noting the careful rows and healthy plants. "Someone has been working very hard here." "She's a good worker," Sam admitted. "But more than that, she's a human being who deserves better than what Blackwood had planned for her." Father Miguel turned back to face Sam. "You know I agree with you about the dignity of all people, my friend. but you also know that others in our community may not see it the same way. What are you saying, Father? I am saying that there may be trouble coming. Blackwood is angry about something. People say he lost money on a deal and is looking for someone to blame. And there are others who think having an Apache woman here, even a purchased one, sets a dangerous example. Sam felt cold despite the warm morning sun. What kind of trouble? The territorial marshal has been asking questions, and there is talk of forming a committee to investigate the situation. Before Sam could respond, they heard the sound of horses approaching fast. 3 riders were coming up the road at a gallop, dust flying behind them. Sam recognized the lead rider immediately. Deputy Marshal Tom Barnes, a young man with more authority than sense. Barnes pulled up hard in front of Sam's house, his horse dancing nervously. Behind him rode 2 men Sam knew from town, Bill Henderson, who owned the general store, and Jake Martinez, a local rancher. "Morrison," Barnes called out, not bothering to dismount. "We need to have a conversation." "Father Miguel, good morning," Barnes added, tipping his hat to the priest. "Didn't expect to see you out here." "I was just visiting with my friend Samuel," Father Miguel replied carefully. Barnes looked around the ranch yard suspiciously. "Is it true you're harboring an Apache woman out here, Morrison?" "I'm not harboring anyone," Sam said. "But yes, there's an Apache woman staying on my property." "Where is she?" Henderson demanded. He was a nervous man who saw threat in every shadow. "We want to see her." "Why?" Sam asked. "Because we need to verify that she's being held properly," Barnes said. "There have been reports that you might be planning to let her escape back to her people." Sam felt his anger rising. "And what if I was?" "Then you'd be aiding and abetting an enemy of the territory," Barnes replied. "That's a serious crime, Morrison." Father Miguel stepped forward. "Gentlemen, perhaps we should discuss this calmly. Samuel is a respected member of our community." "Was a respected member," Martinez said, "before he started keeping company with savages." The word hit Sam like a slap. He took a step toward Martinez, his fists clenched. "You watch your mouth." "Jake?" "Or what?" Martinez shot back. "You'll sick your Apache pet on me?" Before Sam could respond, Ayanna appeared in the doorway of the barn. She had been listening, and she understood enough to know she was the cause of the tension. She walked toward the group with her head high, showing no fear despite being outnumbered. Barnes straightened in his saddle. "There she is. You, woman, come here." Ayanna looked at Sam, who nodded slightly. She walked over but stopped several feet away from the mounted men. "What's your name?" Barnes demanded. "Ayanna," she replied clearly. "Where are you from?" Ayanna hesitated, then said, "Mountains." Henderson leaned forward in his saddle. "Which mountains? How many of your people are out there?" Ayanna remained silent, her dark eyes meeting his stare without flinching. "She doesn't have to answer that," Sam said. "The hell she doesn't," Barnes snapped. "This woman is property according to the bill of sale Blackwood showed me. That means she goes where her owner tells her to go and says what he tells her to say." "I'm not her owner," Sam stated firmly. "Then who is?" Barnes asked. Sam realized he was in an impossible position. If he claimed ownership, he was admitting to treating Ayanna like property. If he denied ownership, these men might try to take her as an uncontrolled Apache. Father Miguel spoke up. "Gentlemen, perhaps there is a solution that serves everyone's interests. Samuel, would you consider allowing Ayanna to stay at the mission for a time? She could learn more about Christian ways, and it would address the community's concerns about her presence here." Sam looked at Ayanna, trying to read her expression. The mission would be safer in some ways, but it would also mean converting her to Christianity and abandoning her Apache identity. It would be another kind of captivity. "No," Ayanna said quietly, but her voice carried clearly. "I stay here." Barnes laughed harshly. "Listen to that. Property telling us what she will and won't do." She's not property, Sam said again, his voice rising. Then prove it, Martinez challenged. Give her a horse and supplies and let her ride out of here right now. The challenge hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Sam knew that sending Ayanna away without protection would be sending her to almost certain death or recapture. But keeping her here was becoming more dangerous every day. Ayanna spoke again, this time directing her words to Sam. I work here. I earn place here. Is not gift. Is not ownership. Is agreement. The men looked confused by her words, but Sam understood. She was claiming the right to stay based on her labor and contribution, not on his charity or authority. It was a sophisticated distinction that these men couldn't grasp. Look, Barnes said, losing patience. I don't care about your agreements or your philosophy. The fact is, we've got an Apache woman loose in our territory, and that makes people nervous. Either you control her properly, or we'll find someone who can. Meaning what? Sam asked. Meaning Blackwood's been asking around about buying her back. Says he's got a buyer in Santa Fe who'll pay top dollar. Sam's blood ran cold. She's not for sale. Everything's for sale for the right price, Henderson said. And Blackwood's offering some interesting terms. Father Miguel looked alarmed. What kind of terms? Barnes smiled unpleasantly. Let's just say he's willing to make it worth everyone's while to see this situation resolved properly. Sam realized that Blackwood wasn't just angry about losing money. He was actively working to get Ayanna back, probably with the promise of sharing profits with local officials who helped him. I have a legal bill of sale, Sam said. She belongs to me according to territorial law. And if you were to sell her to Blackwood, that would also be legal, Barnes pointed out. Might even be your civic duty, considering the concerns of your neighbors. The threat was clear. Sam looked at Ayanna, who was listening intently, despite not understanding every word. She understood enough to know her future was being decided by these men. I need time to think about this, Sam said finally. Think fast, Barnes warned. We'll be back in 3 days. By then, you need to have made a decision about what to do with her. The 3 men turned their horses and rode away, leaving Sam, Ayanna, and Father Miguel standing in the dusty ranch yard. Father Miguel was the first to speak. Samuel, this is worse than I thought. They're not just concerned about community safety, they want to profit from her sale. I won't sell her, Sam said firmly. Then what will you do? The priest asked. Sam looked at Ayanna, who was watching him with those steady dark eyes. I'll figure something out. After Father Miguel left, Sam and Ayanna sat on the porch as the sun began to set. Sam was trying to think of a plan, but every option seemed to lead to danger for one or both of them. You are troubled, Ayanna said. Sam nodded. These men want to hurt you. I promise to keep you safe, but I'm not sure how. Ayanna was quiet for a while, looking toward the mountains in the distance. My people, she said finally. They are far, yes, but not impossible. You want me to help you get back to them? I want you to be safe, she replied. If I stay, you have trouble. If I go alone, I die. But if we go together... Sam understood what she was suggesting. It would mean abandoning his ranch, his life's work, everything he'd built. But it would also mean keeping his promise to set her free. It's a long journey, Sam said. Dangerous. Yes, Ayanna agreed, but possible. They sat in silence as the stars came out, both of them thinking about the choice ahead. In 3 days, the deputy marshal would return expecting an answer, and whatever decision Sam made would determine whether he was a man who lived up to his word or just another person who let fear stop him from doing what was right. That night, as Sam lay in his bed looking out at the stars, he realized that the choice had already been made. The moment he cut the ropes from Ayanna's wrists and promised her freedom, He had committed himself to a path that led away from safety and toward something much more dangerous, but infinitely more important. The next morning, Sam began making quiet preparations. He told Ayanna his decision over breakfast, and for the first time since he'd known her, she smiled. Really smiled with warmth and gratitude that transformed her entire face. "You are a good man, Sam Morrison," she said. "My people will remember your kindness." Sam hoped they would both live long enough for that to happen. But looking at Ayanna's determined expression as she began planning their route to Apache territory, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the certainty that he was doing exactly what needed to be done, regardless of the consequences. Sam Morrison had owned his ranch for 15 years, but it took him only 2 days to decide what he could carry and what he would leave behind forever. The hardest part wasn't choosing between possessions. It was writing the letter he would leave for Father Miguel, explaining why he had to disappear in the night like a man with something to hide. "I am not running from justice," Sam wrote by lamplight while Ayanna prepared travel packs in the barn. "I am running toward it. Sometimes a man has to choose between what is legal and what is right, and I pray God will forgive me if I chose wrongly." On the morning of the second day, Sam released his cattle to roam free rather than leave them to starve in their pens. The horses he couldn't take would find their way to water and grass. Everything else, his house, his furniture, 15 years of building a life, would have to fend for itself. Ayanna worked beside him without complaint, though Sam knew she understood what this journey meant for him. She had asked only one question. "Will you be sorry?" Sam had thought about it seriously before answering. "I'll be sorry if we don't make it. I'll be sorry if something happens to you because I waited too long to act, but I won't be sorry for trying to keep my word." They left the ranch an hour before dawn on the third day, riding north toward the mountains under a sky full of stars. Sam led the way on Jake, his dependable buckskin, while Ayanna rode Sam's second-best horse, a steady mare named Star. They had supplies for 2 weeks, weapons for protection, and a long, dangerous road ahead. The plan was to avoid towns and main trails, following game paths and creek beds toward the high country where Apache bands still moved freely despite government pressure. Ayanna had drawn a rough map in the dirt, showing Sam the landmarks they would need to find. It would take at least 10 days of hard riding if everything went well. Everything did not go well. On the second day of travel, they spotted smoke rising behind them in the distance. Riders with torches, probably tracking them. Sam had expected pursuit, but hoped for more time before it started. "How many?" Ayanna asked, shading her eyes to study the distant smoke. "Hard to tell from here. At least 4, maybe more." Ayanna pointed toward a rocky canyon cutting between 2 hills. "We go there. Horses cannot follow quickly." They spent the next 6 hours leading their horses through terrain so rough that Sam wondered if they'd made a mistake. But when they finally emerged on the far side of the canyon, the smoke behind them was gone. Either their pursuers had given up or taken a longer route around the obstacle. That night, they camped without a fire, eating cold food and sleeping in turns while one of them kept watch. Sam had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. He wasn't just responsible for his own survival now. He was responsible for getting Ayanna safely home to people who might not trust him any more than his own community had trusted her. The third day brought different problems. A late spring storm rolled down from the mountains, bringing cold rain that soaked through their clothes and made the trail treacherous. They took shelter under a rocky overhang, huddled together for warmth while their horses stood miserable in the downpour. "Tell me about your people," Sam said, trying to distract them both from their discomfort. Ayanna was quiet for a while, staring out at the rain. "My father is war chief. My brother trains young warriors. My mother—" She paused, searching for words in English. She makes medicine. Heals people. They'll be happy to see you. Yes, Ayanna said, but something in her voice suggested it wasn't that simple. They will ask questions about white man who brings me home. Sam realized he hadn't thought much about what would happen when they reached Apache territory. He'd been focused on getting Ayanna there safely, but he hadn't considered whether her people would see him as friend or enemy. Will they trust me? He asked. Ayanna looked at him seriously. That depends on you. My people judge by actions, not words. You have acted with honor, so they will give you honor. The rain continued for 2 days, slowing their progress and making Sam worry about their pursuers catching up, but it also covered their tracks and made them harder to follow. When the weather finally cleared, they were high in the mountains, following deer trails through country that grew wilder and more remote with each mile. On the 6th day, Sam saw the first signs that they were entering Apache territory. Ayanna pointed to arrangements of rocks that looked natural but weren't quite random enough. Messages, she explained, left by scouts to warn the main band of travelers in their area. They know we are here, she said. Soon they will come. Sam checked his weapons and tried to calm his nerves. Everything depended on the next few hours. If Ayanna's people saw him as a threat, his journey would end badly despite his good intentions. The Apache warriors appeared without warning, rising from rocks and bushes where they had been invisible moments before. Sam counted 8 men, all armed with rifles and positioned to cut off any escape route. Their leader was a tall man about Sam's age, with intelligent eyes and scars that told stories of many battles. Ayanna called out in rapid Apache, and Sam heard his name mentioned several times. The lead warrior replied in a voice that sounded skeptical but not hostile. The conversation continued for several minutes, while Sam sat still on his horse, trying to look peaceful but ready. Finally, Ayanna turned to Sam. This is Swift Eagle, my father's brother. He asks why a white man brings me home instead of keeping me for himself. Sam had prepared for this question during the long ride. Tell him that keeping a person against their will is wrong, no matter what the white man's law says. Tell him I gave my word to help you return to your family, and a man's word means everything. Ayanna translated, and Swift Eagle studied Sam for a long moment. Then he spoke again, this time directly to Sam in careful English. You could have sold her to bad men for much money. Why you choose hard path instead? Sam met the Apache warrior's gaze steadily. Because money goes away, but a man has to live with his choices forever. I wanted to be able to live with mine. Swift Eagle nodded slowly. You speak truth. Come, we take you to see War Chief. The Apache camp was hidden in a valley between 3 peaks, invisible from any direction until you were almost on top of it. As they rode down into the valley, Sam saw children playing, women working with hides and food preparation, and men maintaining weapons and horses. It looked like communities he'd known, just organized differently. The arrival of the group caused a stir. People gathered to see Ayanna's return, and Sam heard the relief and joy in voices speaking a language he couldn't understand. But he also noticed the careful attention paid to him, the white stranger who had brought their daughter home. Ayanna's father, Chief Standing Bear, was a man of perhaps 50 years with gray, threading his black hair and eyes that had seen too much conflict with white settlers. He greeted his daughter with dignity rather than emotion, but Sam could see the relief in his face. When Ayanna introduced Sam, Standing Bear studied him with the same careful attention his brother had shown. But this examination lasted longer and felt more thorough, as if the chief was looking into Sam's soul. My daughter tells me you bought her from slave traders, then chose to free her. This is unusual for white men. Not all white men are the same, Sam replied, just as I'm sure not all Apache are the same. Standing Bear nodded approvingly. This is wisdom. You understand that people must be judged as individuals, not as tribes. The chief invited Sam to share the evening meal and hear Ayana's full story. Around the fire, with the whole band listening, she told of her capture during a raid on a white settlement where she had been trading, her sale to Blackwood, and her rescue by Sam. She spoke of his kindness, his respect for her dignity, and his promise to help her return home. When she finished, Standing Bear was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke to the gathered people in Apache, then turned back to Sam. My daughter has told us that you gave up your home to keep your word to her. This shows great character. But I must ask, what will you do now? You cannot return to your white community, and this is not your home. It was the question Sam had been avoiding throughout the journey. He had focused so completely on getting Ayana home safely that he hadn't planned beyond that goal. I don't know, Sam admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. Standing Bear smiled, the first time Sam had seen him show any warmth. A man who acts from honor without thought of benefit is rare in any tribe. You are welcome to stay with us as long as you wish. But I think you may have other choices. The chief gestured toward Ayana, who was listening intently. My daughter says you have knowledge of cattle and horses that could be useful to our people. The white settlements will grow larger, and we must learn new ways to survive. A man who understands both worlds could help us find peace. Sam looked around the circle of faces in the firelight. These were the people he'd been taught to fear as savages, but what he saw were families, leaders, and individuals facing the same challenges of survival and dignity that all people faced. I would be honored to help, Sam said, if you think my knowledge would be useful. Standing Bear nodded. We will see. But first you must rest. You have traveled far and taken great risks for honor. This deserves respect. That night, Sam slept more soundly than he had since leaving his ranch. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't responsible for keeping anyone safe or making life-changing decisions. The weight of constant vigilance lifted from his shoulders. Over the following days, Sam learned about Apache life and customs. He shared his knowledge of cattle ranching and horse training, skills that proved valuable to a people adapting to changing times. More importantly, he learned that the Apache were not the savage enemies he'd been told about. They were a complex people with their own codes of honor, their own traditions of hospitality and justice. Ayana served as his translator and guide, helping him understand the subtle social rules that governed band life. Their friendship, forged in crisis and tested by hardship, deepened into something that transcended the racial barriers that divided their two worlds. 3 weeks after their arrival, Swift Eagle brought news from the white settlements. Sam's ranch had been claimed by creditors. His disappearance had been labeled as absconding with stolen property, and there was a reward posted for information about his whereabouts. You cannot go back, Swift Eagle told him. Too many people want you to answer for helping Apache woman. Sam had expected this news, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a door closing forever on his old life. But looking around the Apache camp, watching children play games not so different from ones he remembered from his own childhood, he realized he might have found something better than what he'd lost. A month later, when a cavalry patrol approached under a flag of truce to negotiate the return of some stolen horses, Sam found himself serving as translator and mediator. His knowledge of both cultures, combined with his reputation for honesty, made him valuable as a bridge between two worlds that desperately needed to understand each other better. Standing Bear had been right. A man who understood both worlds could help find peace. It wasn't the life Sam had planned, but it was the life his choices had created. And as he watched Ayana teaching Apache children some of the English words she'd learned, he knew that sometimes the most important journeys take you not where you plan to go, but where you need to be. Years later, when peace treaties were finally signed and the Apache found ways to survive in a changed world, People would remember the white rancher who had given up everything to honor a promise to one woman. They would remember that when he had to choose between safety and justice, between law and conscience, Sam Morrison had chosen correctly. And in the Apache stories told around evening fires, they would speak of Ayanna, the woman who had survived captivity with her spirit intact, and of the white man who had proved that honor could be found in any color of skin. They would tell how his simple act of keeping his word had helped two peoples find a path toward understanding in a world that had forgotten how to trust. Sam Morrison had settled the price to save her and vowed to set her free. In keeping that vow, he had found his own freedom in ways he never could have imagined.